I want to talk now about this new, we've read report, this new immigration deal that apparently the EU has struck, which is going to ensure that this mass migration crisis that we're seeing, not just across Europe, but in the UK as well, is going to be brought under control. But I can tell you, my friends at home, having read the press release issued by the European Union more than once, I find it quite hard to work out what is actually new in it. And that's why I'm delighted that former Brexit Party MEP and Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, is joining us to tell us all about it. Ben, what on earth is it all about?
I mean, I tried to research it, and in fact, I spoke to your editor before coming on, asking him if he had any more details, because as you pointed out, it's scant in detail. But as I understand it, the way it works is there'll be a series of detention centres in around the points at which illegal migrants typically enter Europe, so that's Italy, Western Balkans and Greece. And using the principles of the Dublin Accord, which is that migrants must apply for asylum in the first country at which they land, unless they've got reasons not to make that application. They'll be held there in these detention centres, and those migrants who are found, and there'll be some kind of rapid process to determine whether or not they have a legitimate claim for asylum, and those ones who are found not to have a legitimate claim will be deported back to the countries from which they came. And countries such as Pakistan, for example, which, where there aren't any human rights issues typically that would create an emigration problem from Pakistan, would get a lot of migrants being sent back quickly. But I see a lot of problems with the proposal as set out, or the deal. The deal, I think, is between the EU and the member state countries that signed up to it. But I see a lot of problems with it. First of all, human rights law doesn't work, as we've discovered, at a kind of global level. Every individual's case needs to be heard. And even though, surprisingly, the EU is not a member of the European Convention of Human Rights, all the member states are, so they'll be subject to that. So they're going to have challenges at the human level. And then, of course, you've got to have the ability to deport these people back to the countries from which they came. So you need agreements to send these people back. You can't just send them on the boat that they came on. And so I think the big challenge is there. And then, of course, you've got the whole thing of, the same issues that we face in this country with what we call lefty lawyers. Other people might have other names for them. Putting spanners in the works all the way until this thing fails.
But look, big announcement. It's quite difficult to get to the bottom of. Thank you for educating us. But is this going to help us here in the UK? Because obviously if they're cutting off the supply to some extent of people entering Europe, many of them then travel across Europe, end up in France and ultimately end up crossing the Channel in a small boat. Is this going to help our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and the United Kingdom in this ambition to stop the boats?
If the scheme works as it's described, I think those of us who wish to stop illegal migration should be very pleased, because it sounds very, I want to choose my words carefully, it's very definite. They will detain and they will hold in these detention centres and they will deport. So as you rightly say, that would cut the flow of people moving across Europe. And if they cut the flow of people moving across Europe, and France takes about half of illegal migrants coming into Europe, and then, about a third of whom, those who get into France try and make it to the United Kingdom. If they can stop that flow, it's greatly beneficial for the United Kingdom. But the other thing that is taking place that is already beneficial for the United Kingdom, and indeed all of Europe, in my view, is that Germany, France, Slovenia, Sweden, and in, I think it's 11 countries in total, have suspended freedom of movement at their borders under the Schengen zone, and they are putting in border controls, which it's high time they did it, and it actually reveals how ridiculous the Schengen zone was.
I mean, how can they do it? Because we were all told during the Brexit referendum it's completely impossible. It was the one thing that the European Union wouldn't negotiate on, the freedom of movement. It's probably got into such a mess in Northern Ireland. How have they managed to do it?
Well, I think there are, under extremists, I think member states can shut their borders down temporarily. But this isn't a temporary problem. This is a permanent problem. And I think what it's revealed is that the Schengen zone is as daft as brushes. It opens up Europe to abuse, not just at that level, but even with legal migration, with all sorts of other issues. Nation states are defined in significant part by their territorial borders. They provide protection to nation states. To remove those borders without any protections in place, as I said, is daft.
So look, well, let's hope that it does make a bit of a difference and helps alleviate the problem here in the UK. But you're right, we don't often appreciate that we are just in the foothills of this migration crisis. It will be a politically dominant issue, I think, for the next decade.